to putting on the vertical or the upper canopy or the cabanes or anything, make sure you got what you want done on the bottom side. So you can do this. You can get this, you get your plane on its back. Otherwise, you're going to have to put it in a cradle and a lot of unnecessary. So before I move on again, I do have it on its back again because I'm going to attempt something I have not attempted yet on any plane. And I'm going to do it just because I have to. I mean, it's, well, what the hell. I'm going to have, there's two 1/16 plywood fairings that go right here. I already got them all cut out. What I'm going to do is I already got the wing set up, or I'm put the wing in here, trace the side of the body here, and gave myself enough room. So I'm going to trim this out. And these fairings, I'll do this right about the time I cover it. These fairings are going to go in here. And it's going to be my fuselage to wing fairing. And it'll make the fuselage look that much prettier. Is when I go ahead, when these are finally installed, I'm going to have the fabric and everything on. I'm going to put a big old body fillet right here, or fillet, smooth it out, make it look nice and pretty, and it'll be my sweep out fuselage to wing fairing. So I'm setting up that now. You can see some of the Bondo that I put on the front here around the front end didn't completely cure up. I'm having a little problem with that. Let that dry some more and then we'll worry about that later. Okay, so I got myself set up for this. I'm going to trim it out, see how it fits, make sure they fit in there. But before I permanently install them, I'm going to go ahead and cover it. Cover the airplane and everything, because when I cover the wing, I'm going to start adding thickness to the wing, and then it'll no longer fit in there. So I'm going to have to do this like a last minute. And plus the fairing itself will go over the fabric, so it'll look a lot smoother transition. Okay. So, and about the next thing we got to go to is the vertical. Got this trimmed out. Show you now before I put the wing back on. Remember when I was showing you how I was doing a body filler buildup right here at the saddle and the screws? Well, if you didn't do that and set it, make sure you had it where you wanted it and then moved on. See, I just scarfed 1/16 out of this saddle in order to get my fairings to sit in here. If I didn't have this set, I would have just totally messed up my angle of attack on my wing. But since this is already preset, my wing's not going to change unless I mess this up somehow. I should harden this up. So I'm not losing anything by putting the fairings on there. So of course I've put the fairings away already. See, the fairing will fit right in there. Take up that space. And ta-da! So let's put the wing back on there. Here's the wing on, airplane upright, and a fairing in there. And you can see I got a gap. There's a gap around here. So I'm going to have to fill that back in with some balsa or whatever. But the important thing is to get this fairing down flush at the wing. And then you fill up the gap on top of that between the fuselage. That way you got a nice snug fit on your wing. And then when you fill this with the fairing, it's just going to look pretty. Fairing out. You can see there is a gap in there, but my wing is bolted down, so I have this existing gap, but my wing is in its permanent fixed position. So now you can play with it a little bit here. I'll fine tune that and then I'll move on to the fin. Before the strike. Okay, right now, as you can see in the background, I do have the fin on. That was fairly simple. Okay, now I'm going to have to cut the upper canopy, the slot for the fin. And at the same time, I'm having, I really can't show you because I got the fin in the way, but when I had this down, the canopy on top of the fuselage, can't remember if I videotaped this or not, I had a gap in order to maintain the contour of the canopy without like deforming it. To make it fit the plane, you make the plane fit the canopy. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a sloppy-looking airplane. So, I'm using that body filler as a build-up. This stuff is like almost like formable styrofoam, kind of, sort of. It's some really neat stuff if you take the time to be able to work with it. I'm going to use this for a plug, and I'm going to plug that hole up with this. When I got it to the shape that I want it to be, then I'm going to harden it up with some nitrate dope, which will fuel-proof it. Or you got the option, you can take 5-minute epoxy, do the same thing. But 5-minute epoxy will add some thickness, so depends on what you really want. 5-minute epoxy, it'll last longer. That's what I did with the saddle on my Trainer 60, and I'll show that to you here. Trainer 60 up on its floats. When I had this thing on its wheels, I was trying to tear the wings off. This is a fast plane. Dun, 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 dun. Now on this one, when I built this one up, I ran into a major problem on the saddle, the wing saddle on this one. Now the saddle on this one's on the top side. But I joined those wings together with totally different incidences, so this thing would have just spun in the air, basically. It would have rolled in the air due to the difference that I had on the wing. So I had those wings were completed, and I set the saddle up to those wings, and then I figured out my wing was screwed up. So I believe I have it on a video somewhere, me cutting these wings back apart. Matter of fact, I'll find that and I'll put that in here. I cut those wings back apart, glued them back together at what I feel as though is correct, close as I could get it anyway, and then I had to reset the saddle. Well, you really can't see it. I can get a close-up view. You really can't see it in this. But this there's about a 1/4 of an inch on the top of this saddle right here, 1/4 of an inch of it is that body filler with 5-minute epoxy on it to keep it nice and hard. I have not had a problem with it whatsoever. I mean, the whole top of this saddle right here is body filler and 5-minute epoxy, and I shaped this thing up to meet my messed up wing, and I've flown this thing with on its wheels. I've tried to tear the wings off of it, and I blew an aileron doing some pretty nasty stuff. But otherwise, I mean, you don't see any damage to it whatsoever. Flies pretty good on its floats too. It's flown twice off of the lake out here. I haven't flown it since I put this waterproof switch. I put a waterproof switch in the side here. Alright, that's my version of, I could have spent $3 and just put one on it, but of course I had to try and make one myself, so everything's a challenge. But while I got this thing here in front of you, okay, you can see elevator and rudder. notice the little rudders on the ends of the floats as well. They're turning with the aft rudder. That's all rigged up to my nose wheel steering. Now when this thing's on its wheels, the nose wheel steers it around on the ground. Taxis around in that. And when you're in the water, you need little rudders in the back. And I don't have the wing on so you can't see aileron. Anyway, that's enough of that plane in front of you. That engine that's on the front of that is the same size engine I'm going to end up putting on this biplane. That's a good size engine. That's a OS 61 SP? No, that's an SF. Tim looked at me off for a weird one day when I said SP. It's SF. This engine here, if I can't come up with another one, I'm going to have to, that's a $250 motor. If I can't come up with another one through a trade with a guy, I'm going to end up taking this engine off of this plane and putting it on the biplane. But it's going to have to be turned on its side so the head sticks out the side, and I'm going to have an in-cowling muffler. Won't have that big muffler on the side there, because this biplane's got a closed cowling like the Bonanza's going to have. So you basically, the only thing you can see of the engine on a closed cowling is just the top of the head. Just so you can get your glow plug on there, and then everything else is going to be remote somehow. I have not done a closed cowling yet. That's why the Bonanza ain't done. But this engine here is the engine that's same size engine that's going to go on this biplane. This here in front of you is refueling setup that I got on this particular plane. I'm not sure if I like it. I'm not sure if it leaks air to the engine or not. You'll yet to determine that, because the engine's still running kind of bogus. But the motor is just barely broken in. So pointed to this side of the room. There's one of the helicopters hanging up in the corner, and then you can see rockets hanging across the top. And then there's one airplane, that's my Trainer Easy Fly 40. It's a trainer plane that I use. It's got a 40 size airplane on it. And then you can see Gentle Lady wings, trainer wings. This is on this end of the room. My flight box. I don't think I got flight box on camera. Here, let me put this on camera. My flight box. This is one of my own designs. Another major project that I took a long time on. It's nothing but a Rubbermaid fishing tackle box, power panel and battery on the front side, which made it heavy on that end, so when you drove around or had it in the car, the battery in and everything wanted to nose over, so I put it on legs, and then I ended up cocking it back, and then I had wasted space underneath, so I used the underneath of it as a drawer, so I turned it into a drawer. And then I ended up putting that's a quick charge panel for quick charging your batteries if they go dead out the flying side. So I can pretty much stay all day out there as long as I don't run out of fuel or crash my plane. Rubbermaid, it's fairly, it's waterproof. I mean, it can sit out in the rain. I suppose the bottom panel might get wet. But then I don't leave it out in the rain either, but just in case. But I mean, nice and solid locks. Open it up. I got everything in the world that you need in there. I pretty much call it my airplane first aid kit. But you can you don't have to use the flying boxes that everybody else is using. People don't have half of the stuff that I got in mine. And when I'm out at the flying site, they love, oh man, you got everything in the world in yours, everything in the world in yours. It's just, basically they like making fun of it, but it's real strange when something goes wrong out there. I'm the first person they come to. Do you got this? Do you got that? It's an airplane first aid kit. I mean, if you're serious and you're going out there, you got to try and bring it with you. You know what I mean? You can't bring everything, but you can bring maybe one of everything. Kind of, sort of. The worst thing you can do is crash, and then you're going to have to bring that back in your bucket. They have that. This box is glued down, has the charger and everything for the power panel battery, which is underneath. And then this box holds a digital voltmeter to measure the resistance, or make sure everything's running right. Got electric starter, so you don't mess with that chicken stick stuff, but there is chicken sticks in there. And then timer, that's nothing but a cooking timer for making sure you don't run out of gas, because you only can run your engine for so long, for so many minutes, so you kind of time everything out. Turn off that scanner. And then just one little box full of all your goodies with some notes. I have permanent markered on top. But go with what you need. Don't follow everybody else. If you're going to follow everybody else, you're going to end up building one of them damn Cubs and end up flying a Cub like everybody else. Be an individualist with the hobby. Do what you want to do. Don't be listening to what everybody else wants you to do, because there's a lot of snobs in this hobby as far as I'm concerned. And you can see you got extra props. Those are the props for the Trainer 60. Extra props for the 60, and then I have extra props in the bottom and glues and everything for smaller engines. You kind of learn over time. This box here is probably about 3 years in the making now. I suppose I never did date it. But 3 years in the making. Pretty much got the idea for my flight box by this box on original. This is the bigger version of my flight box. I had this first, and I keep this. This is where I keep all my small miscellaneous model parts. I don't have them spread all over the place. They're all kept in this particular box here, which has got flip top for, stuff. And the flight box has got the same kind of lid. They're basically the same kind of box, except for one's bigger than the other. I fell in love with this one because it keeps everything that I possess in miscellaneous small parts, and I keep them in categories. It's got a neat little top. I wish I had two of those. This is where I pretty much store everything. I try to anyway. That way, if I organize too much, and I tend to lose things. And if I try to keep them in here, then I tend to lose it in one spot only, if you know what I mean. But this here, man, I fell in love with this box because I keep everything in category. Building materials. This all up here is miscellaneous hardware and drills. Building materials, power plants, glues, miscellaneous hardware, landing gears. That'd be for floats and anything like that. All flight controls, like control horns and all that. And then you can get from the bottom side, you can get this and this are the same spot. You can just get to the bottom side, but this side has two extra compartments. And then over on this side, it's got an extra compartment for storing a bunch of stuff, just like a flight box does. This here in particular, that's my museum of Bonanza pieces. That's where I have all my Bonanza pieces. They've been there for years. Once I get my biplane done and I go back to the Bonanza, we'll probably end up using all that up. But that's where I keep all my Bonanza parts. Since a Bonanza is like 5 years old,